Story 1. Prison rape culture is alarming. A person who was incarcerated in New York mentioned that guards would often confine smaller inmates with violent rapists, both as punishment to coerce the victimized prisoner into compliance and as an incentive for the violent rapists to behave. Essentially, good behavior was rewarded with the opportunity to assault a smaller inmate. Story 2. It is completely normal for people to encourage their children to join social media platforms like YouTube and TikTok and exploit their charm for personal gain. However, this practice is considered child labor in other countries. Story 3. That people with a disability or chronic illness can be treated as subhuman or third-rate citizens seems to be a universal issue worldwide. Story 4. Forcing your children to hug or kiss adults when they do not want to, such as grandparents, uncles, or family friends, is not appropriate. Story 5. Mormons allow adult men to question their children about their sex life. Children are expected to participate in these interviews at least once a year. During these discussions, the bishop may ask if they have ever engaged in self-exploration. If the answer is yes, he will seek further details. Story 6. Teacher-student relationships can be troubling. I have worked in this field for about 5 years, and it is often distressing. Inevitably, some 15-year-old girl may emotionally misinterpret her feelings and believe she is in love with the first male authority figure who shows her compassion and genuinely cares for her well-being. Similarly, many young boys may immaturely attempt to pursue romantic interests with an attractive female teacher in hopes of gaining social status. It is alarming to consider scenarios where inappropriate relationships are dismissed as consensual by the courts. Story 7. Paparazzi and celebrity gossip culture normalize the idea of stalking individuals as long as they are famous and their intimate details can generate profit. Story 8. How about alleviating the pain and suffering of seniors, the sick, the disabled, and those with mental health issues? Some individuals are struggling to cope. Story 9. In some parts of America, child beauty pageants involve children performing acts that are extremely unnatural. Parents invest outrageous sums of money, children are highly sexualized, and medals that are largely meaningless are awarded. Story 10. Parents pushing their kids too far in sports is concerning. I grew up racing motocross and attended regional amateur races. It was disturbing to see the number of kids being reprimanded by their parents in the pits after races. Motocross parents can be particularly intense. Thankfully, my parents never treated me that way. Story 11. West Virginia's bill allows adults to check children's genitals without their parents' permission. Can it get any more blatant than that? Story 12. Seeing pedophilia in everything. I saw a woman online checking herself out, and people were saying she should be more self-conscious about doing that because her body resembles that of a child. They claimed her followers were pedophiles because of this. She is a grown woman, just happens to be short and flat-chested. Story 13. Putting your children on social media, and even worse, creating separate social media accounts for kids who can barely walk or talk yet. Story 14. Teenage characters being nude or having sex in television shows raises concerns. It doesn't matter if the actor is an adult. It feels inappropriate to portray young characters in such explicit situations. Story 15. People are posting near-fatal and fatal videos on social media, all for attention or likes. It is totally disgraceful. Story 16. Children's dance competitions. I recently went to a hotel where there were 7-year-old girls wearing very tight clothes and full faces of makeup. It was unsettling. Story 17. Recording random people. Ah, that old man is sitting there all by himself. Look at them buying stuff for their family or partner. Imagine you are relaxing in public, and later you decide to watch videos. You might stumble upon a video of someone recording you that day. Story 18. Male genital mutilation involves complex arguments as some people attempt to justify why boys should not have the right to genital integrity. Story 19. The normalization of extreme violence in modern warfare is concerning. We have become desensitized to the horrors, viewing the extermination of other human beings as something normal. It sickens me to watch the news and hear that hundreds of people are brutally killed every day, reported in the same tone as if announcing tomorrow's weather will be warm. It is inhuman. Story 20. High schools and middle schools require female athletes to wear tight and short uniforms on athletic teams similar to what women wear at the beach. Story 21. Putting kids as main characters who get hurt and experimented on in adult shows is concerning. I am referring to Stranger Things. Those kids, now adults, admit how sexualized they were when they were minors. Not just the girl, but the boys as well. However, for some reason, people loved the show and didn't complain. Story 22. Adults in their 30s to 50s and above dating individuals with ages ending in teen, 18 or 19, is legal, but it still feels quite unsettling. Story 23. Children's clothing is being designed to be tiny versions of adults, specifically for little girls. 4-year-olds do not need booty shorts and crop tops. Story 24. People are obsessed with celebrities' personal lives, even tracking their flights and following them in public. Story 25. Rape laws, particularly those defining legal rape as forced penetration, imply that men cannot be raped, which is incorrect. If a forced penetration standard is required for defining rape, it should be revised to include forced or unwanted participation in penetrative sex, ensuring both parties face the same legal consequences. Moreover, the disparity in legal consequences for sexual assault between men and women is unacceptable, and the treatment of sexual assault survivors is often appalling. Story 26. Watching athletes physically harm each other and risk traumatic brain injury for entertainment. Story 27. Interest. It is astonishing that people can charge interest on loans and that the price of goods and services is allowed to increase indefinitely, as if we live on a planet with infinite resources. It is concerning that we have such an exploitative system integrated into many aspects of our society, particularly in essential areas like education and housing. Did we really give control of this to individuals lacking empathy? It is unsettling that this concept originated and that so many accepted it. Story 28. I had a conversation today. I used to think we all agreed as a global society that Nazis and rapists were the absolute bottom of the scum of the earth. Like universally reviled with no sympathy, just toss them all in the fire. The last few years, though, have shown that not only are people generally okay with them, but many actually approve of them and think it's pretty sweet. Remember when Smash Mouth did a drunken, weird Nazi-like salute on stage at a music festival a few years ago and the band had to break up? Now people are embracing that behavior everywhere. Even child molesters, who were on a whole separate tier of disdain, not only seem to get a free pass but actually have fans who aspire to be like them, such as Andrew Tate and Drake. Story 29. It is concerning to observe behavior that objectifies young women as soon as they reach adulthood. When I was 27 and using a dating app, a 22-year-old messaged me, and it made me uncomfortable, as I felt it was inappropriate for her to reach out to me. Story 30. In South Korea, parents allow their children, usually aged 12 to 17, to debut in K-pop groups and live with others. This is very normalized there, and it's concerning. Story 31. In Tennessee, many parents are accepting of minors aged 14 and older engaging in sexual relationships with adults. While they may express concerns online by saying, "Save the children," in reality, their actions suggest otherwise. Story 32. Double standards between genders and sexual harassment. Women are often labeled as bold and wild, while men are viewed as criminals and creeps. Story 33. Television sex scenes between teenagers are concerning. I don't understand how this is not considered inappropriate content. Netflix frequently features shows with teenage sex scenes, which frustrates me. It is troubling that no one addresses how disturbing it is for these scenes to be continuously presented. Teenagers are minors. We should stop depicting sexual situations involving them. Story 34. Taking healthy children and removing sensitive tissue and nerves from them in the hope that it could prevent issues later. Story 35. Female predators. All the men who question, "Where was she when I was in school?" when a woman takes advantage of a young child. Story 36. Forcing children to have a religion, marry, and have a child is concerning. It's alarming to think about. Imagine approaching random people and asking, "Are you all in a relationship? Go have children." Story 37. Not all of society, but people who think that a jury ruling finding someone liable for sexual abuse is not enough to stop supporting the President of the United States. His supporters say, "If there's no video, there's no case." They are troubling individuals, and every supporter I have met and will meet falls into this category. They are not welcome in my town. They pose a danger to every woman in America. Story 38. Anything related to children or recently turned adults being in relationships or situations with adults. Story 39. Sexually exploiting children is a serious issue. School uniforms for sports and the portrayal of child dancers can sometimes be sexualized. It is concerning that some individuals who express outrage about child exploitation also dress their children in inappropriate clothing, such as shorts and halter tops. Story 40. Not asking for permission before you touch someone is concerning. What's particularly strange is that requesting consent is often perceived as unusual. Story 41. Women being touchy. It is often considered more socially acceptable for a woman to touch or rub someone during a conversation, such as rubbing their upper thigh. However, if a man touches someone without consent, there is usually an immediate reaction. When a woman does the same, it is often dismissed as being physically affectionate, leading others to accuse the person of overthinking it. If a woman commits sexual assault, she is more likely to evade consequences, with remarks such as "you should consider yourself lucky," or "it couldn't have been that bad," which can result in the victim being laughed at. Story 42. People asking about your sex life or how many people you've slept with. Men harassing others, and it being dismissed as "boys will be boys." Adults telling young girls that boys are just picking on them because they are pretty. This is an alarming cultural issue. I recently witnessed this with my niece when a boy was shoving her, and his mother told my niece that "he just thinks you're pretty." I immediately told my niece that his behavior was not acceptable and that no one has the right to touch her or be unkind to her. Story 43. School-age cheerleaders and car washes have improved over the years. However, there have been times when I have seen young children in their cheerleading outfits by the roadside holding signs for car washes. It is clear that most people getting their cars washed by cheerleaders are not doing so because they believe it's the best service available. It always makes me feel uneasy when I witness this. Story 44. Not really said as okay, but still somehow legal is the depiction of anime characters who are over 30 but look like children and teenagers in revealing clothing. This highlights the general oversexualization of female anime characters. Story 45. Hate. Think about it. Why is it acceptable to hate? Excluding the hatred towards someone who has wronged you, why do we accept widespread hatred as normal and expected? Story 46. Stalking your partner's ex or anyone else's social media pages, along with the availability of incognito mode on these sites, raises questions about people's intentions. Why are individuals often so secretive? Story 47. I am frustrated with religion as a whole. My beliefs are true, yours are not. Guilt and shame are prevalent, and almost all wars stem from these differences. Children are told they will go to hell, and faith is placed in things that lack evidence. Some people try to legislate their beliefs. It is important to respect others and their beliefs. I could elaborate further, but for now, let us hope for healing. Story 48. Drinking alcohol to vent negative emotions and harass others is often excused by society. People may say, "He doesn't mean it that way. He is just drunk." You have to accept that he misbehaves toward you. It's better to ignore him or avoid him. Story 49. To devote yourself for a lifetime so that an already wealthy individual becomes even richer allows powerful elites to evade accountability. Story 50. Death penalty. The fact that anyone can support it without exhibiting a higher level of psychopathy is puzzling. Story 51. How some workplaces expect you to treat your job like a family while paying you barely enough to survive. Story 52. Probably controversial, but allowing anyone who is still learning algebra to operate a multi-ton metal vehicle that goes over 150 miles per hour. Story 53. Apparently, voting in a convicted felon and alleged rapist to lead your country is acceptable to some Americans. Story 54. Circumcision involves the removal of a piece of skin from the newborn baby boy. Some proponents argue for it based on historical practices that date back thousands of years. Story 55. How most anime portrays little kids is concerning. Fan service can often be seen as pedophilia, and there is no justification for it. Japan has a significant issue with child exploitation that many people seem to accept. Story 56. Interest rates and banking advertisements often promote concepts of partnership and friendship. However, these institutions frequently encourage individuals to take on debt and may repossess houses. There seems to be a lack of moral integrity in these practices. Story 57. School shootings. If we genuinely wanted to stop them, we could, but American society would rather allow them than compromise even slightly. Story 58. 40-year-old men thinking it's acceptable to pursue 20-something women is inappropriate, especially when it's unwelcome. Story 59. Well, Reddit thinks it's acceptable for men to send me inappropriate messages after I've posted in a very safe for work subreddit. I have reported dozens of messages, but these individuals do not get them removed. Story 60. I will say this every time it is asked. Drinking milk. Cows are forcefully impregnated so that we can consume their milk. Don't get me wrong, I use milk all the time. I'm just saying that it's strange. Story 61. Indoctrinating your children to believe the same made-up religion you were taught to believe creates an ongoing cycle that perpetuates hate and division. Additionally, all religions can be viewed as unsettling. Story 62. Voting for a criminal with such serious allegations for president is concerning. It raises questions about the judgment of those who supported this individual. Story 63. Circumcision. I will never understand why people think it is acceptable to perform this procedure on an infant without their consent. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.